Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Knitted Art History, where I am sitting telling you some art history stories while knitting. And welcome back to another video that we are gonna be talking today about an interesting topic. Well, as you can see, we're going to be talking about art expertise. So I will tell you pretty briefly, well, obviously briefly, what is this about? What is this? Or why are we doing this? How we are doing this? So basically today I'm going to tell you about methods and what we can determine from art expertise. At the end also I will focus mostly on basis of painting, so I mean like canvases, wood and stuff like that. So also I will briefly get through all of this to explain you what can we see by studying like one of the aspects of an object of art. Because if I will get into complete details here, it will be a very long video. And plus, to be honest, I don't really have like this much information prepared because I unfortunately didn't find anything in English. I didn't find any very great manual, basically, like very great book in English that would show what is art expertise, how to do this and stuff like that. So basically everything that I prepared this material today based on what I was taught in university when we had our course of art expertise, and just what is written in our Ukrainian books, Soviet books, and stuff like this. But I suppose, to be honest, that biggest part of these methods, they are still in use even though they are already like 30-40 years old, because they are very effective. And so yes, so I don't think that there's a lot of new stuff done now, and I don't think that there will be a lot of differences, to be honest. So yeah, so I will tell you, bombard you with this information, and I will try to find some kind of pictures also to a bit to illustrate at least certain parts, certain methods how to do things. But today's video, it will not be about pictures, so mostly it's about just me talking. I will probably not need anything today. Yeah, so without further ado, let's start our video. So basically, what is an art expertise? So art expertise is an independent type of examination, as we can say, during which the attribution and determination of the cultural and historical value of objects of art is carried out. One of the most important problems and big problems, this is the scale of the research. Because a work of art is an artifact that is made of various materials, and the list of which can be quite long actually. So the object can be made both using a set of various chemical components, for example, which are paintings, and or they can be done from something like from one material, like sculptures. And the scale in terms of the size can also vary, because it can be a sketch or it can be literally an architectural monument. A significant part of research on art subjects requires interaction with specialists of in other fields, and the intensity of such interaction can be short-term for the duration of the research, or will require the the creation of associations, for example, or collaborations for a very significant period of time, or sometimes even on a permanent basis. The concept of attribution is closely related to the examination of works of art, and attribution is traditionally based on stylistic analysis and comparison of the research objects with known works taken as a standard for this, master, for example, circle, I don't know, time, some directions, whatever. The main tool of comparison for art historical attribution is a visual survey, and the database is a set of images and information about them accumulated as a result of research and during the relevant theoretical training and practical experience of a specialist. However, attribution cannot exist on its own, well, at least not anymore. because it is, now we have those methods that are giving us more information than attribution, and that are more believable, as we can say. Because attribution, like everything started with attribution, obviously, but so now we have more and more methods integrated in art history, like in art, like art historical, like, or art expertise just overall. And because attribution was attribution, so there was this case actually in 1937. The public found out that certain paintings that were classified as those paintings of golden age, of classics, like classical painters of the Netherlands, of their golden period of time, they were all actually a forgery that was done by such a painter, Han van Meegeren. I'm sorry if I'm kind of mispronouncing it. And he, well, supposedly I saw the info, like I read the information that he sold, it was like 14 or something paintings. Some of them were classified as paintings of Vermeer. And I think that if you are interested in art, this is one of the topics that you definitely heard about. So so I've read somewhere that by selling those forgeries, he actually gained almost like $2.5 million, and like it is back in like almost like first half of 20th century. So you can imagine how like it's a lot of money now. It was a lot of money back then, definitely. Forging such stuff, it also like it's an art. It is literally forging art is art also, as we can say. And I see that a lot of art historians are thinking the same also, as, and I mean, like, or it's better to say that I support this idea, of like my like previous previous colleagues, how to call it, I don't know. Because you need to know a lot of things to forge something, like, let's say this Vermeer, for example. You need to know basically extremely well his technique, how he was working and stuff like this, because every artist, or biggest part of artists, they have their own styles and they have their own manner of working, like techniques, yeah, this is the correct word to use. And it's actually hard for them, to forge one another, basically, as we can say. Let alone, not a lot of artists that are actually they know technicalities, because nowadays everything is already like prepared, everything is already made, so they don't really need to make their own canvases. They don't need to prime them, they don't need to do their own paint. So it's they're just coming, buying, and they're starting to work. It's not making them better. It's not making them more skillful than like their previous colleagues. And I mean, they're like the artists from previous periods of time. And the most terrific part about all of this is that a lot of them, they don't want even to learn that. And it was, I remember hearing some of the painters, like some of our students who were studying, like who were training to become painters, saying, why the hell do I need to learn art history? And that was one of the most terrific things that I heard. And I was like, what? I was blown away by this. Like, what do you mean? You're an artist, why do you need to learn art history? And then I found out also that biggest part of them, they don't know how to make their own canvases, they don't know how to work with their own material and stuff like this. So this is a direct decline in their skills and everything. And so it's in their skills, in their intellect and stuff like that. So yeah, like a little bit such a harsh comment on painters. Not just on painters, I mean sculptors. Yeah, is that a word? Those who are making sculptures, let's go like this. It's completely the same. And so it's terrific. It's not good. It's not good at all. But why did I venture in this direction? Art attribution. You need to be extremely educated to like attribute stuff. And so you see, it was this scandal. Yeah, getting back to the scandal. It was I don't remember the name of the art historian, and we'll clearly it's not really needed, so we don't remember him, but we remember and we know this forger artist. So yeah, obviously his reputation was damaged a lot, as you can imagine, because he was like, that is like one of the best, that is Vermeer, it's like 100% Vermeer and everything. And so some of these paintings were sold to private collections and to museums also, and you can imagine also how, I mean, it is completely artificial problem, to be honest, and I don't understand the seriousness behind all of that, as an art historian also. Well, we need to believe in something. We need to. Well, the whole society is artificial, right? I think you can agree with me on that. And so, if we want to have some kind of order in this, like in our society, we need to create those artificial problems and artificial things and rules and everything. But I mean, sometimes it's too dramatic on my taste. But it was this thing, it was the problem like that, and it was like not the only problem, but it is just like one of the biggest forgery scandals in art history. So that's why attribution, it's not always the best. And again, I will repeat myself, because now we can we have those methods that will give us more believable information and more accurate information. We are using them also. So it's attribution and those specific like methods of art expertise that I will be mentioning today. So now we are using a lot of also natural and scientific methods, as we can call it. So basically we can also kind of say that art is getting out of this completely humanitarian field, but then archaeology also, I will also call it that it's not completely humanitarian, it's not completely scientific, obviously. So those are disciplines now that are somewhere in between, because we are using a lot of methods of humanitarian direction. We are using a lot of, again, those methods from scientific, more naturalistic methods. Well, those methods, the main tasks of those methods include solving the question of authorship, for example, establishing, confirming, or on the contrary, rejecting the authorship of analyzed work. It's also dating the work, also determining the school to which this work belongs, solving the question of the originality or of second nature of the work. I will mention about this a bit later. Distinguishing according to the type of secondness, so whether it is a copy, authors or like co-authors, like repetition, because this is not forgery, it is still considered an original, or this work belongs to a workshop, to a circle, to a school, or to a certain follower of the master, or this is imitation, forgery, or stylization, something like this. Determination also of the state of preservation, it is all of these methods are used. Determination of the artistic level of the work, another thing. So etc, etc. Those are like the main and the most important. It would be appropriate also to note that sometimes only a close look of a highly qualified specialist is enough to learn a lot about a painting, as I said. Even an initial inspection allows to detect violations of painting layers, which may indicate gross interventions and reworking of certain piece of work. However, again, I will repeat myself that sometimes it's enough. There is certain painters that are they have very distinctive style. So a very qualified person, who he can use the method just of attribution, and then just those certain natural or scientific methods that they can confirm that. But we already know for a fact that this is, I don't know, let's say it's Monet, for example. However, yes, I said sometimes it's not enough, and so why not use something that will determine whether it's this or that for 100%. Well, at least not for 100, but at least for 99.9%. Why not? The possibilities of human vision, especially under normal daylight or electric light, are not limitless. Much more can be seen by examining a work of painting in the infrared and ultraviolet spectrum. So this is one of the methods, one of the first methods that we will go into. Ultraviolet rays directed at the surface of the picture allow you to see the integral glow of the varnish, the paint layer and also the primer, which makes it possible to obtain certain information about the state of preservation of the work, again, of originality and stuff like this. So those stuff are things like what can we see is loses and restoration interventions, for example. We can detect faded inscriptions and some signatures made with, for example, iron, gallium ink, as well as to see mercury and iron containing pigments, identify some individual dating pigments, because the use of certain pigments was characteristics for different historical eras. So for example, the presence of zinc whites may indicate that the picture was painted no earlier than after the 18th century, which on itself can give us kind of a date, and also can prove that the work is a forgery, for example. Also, we can, through this method, we can get information about the depth of the signature under the varnish layer, between the varnish layer, on top of the varnish, on top of loses, on top of restorations and stuff like this. And again, by determining where this signature is, we can also get into the fact whether it is an original or a forged work. The results of the research are additionally verified by microscopy data, and the pigments identified in the ultraviolet, they are clarified by the results of chemical analysis. So another two things that we are using. Research in the infrared spectrum is carried out using an electron-optical converter, which makes the infrared image visible. This allows you to solve a number of tasks which are important for examination, such as, for example, we can see the layers of painting located below the visible surface, so we can detect compositional changes or some records or whatever, as well as to see restoration interventions, again, another thing that we can use for that. Also, we can distinguish between the preparatory layer and the large-scale grid under the layer of painting, if it's present, and another thing that we can detect is also inscriptions and signatures. Again, so we can use this method also to do that. When studying painting in the infrared spectrum, such substances as coal, for example, soot as graphite pencil, ink also, basically all of these materials that contain carbon in them, they are very well identified. For infrared rays, the coating varnish is completely transparent, and pollution and thin layers of paintings are not distinguished. So the most important also information can be obtained by examining the preparatory drawing, which is hidden technological author's sign, basically, also we can say. Because if the drawing is more free, with corrections and compositional changes, as a rule, it indicates the originality of the work. A hard drawing with, with some lines in them, or basically some objects that have already, lines of shade and where shade will be, where light will be, and stuff like this, they most often they indicate that the work is secondary or even a forge. So another two methods, I will name them as two different methods, but they're, to be honest, kind of similar. So one of them it's very simple and accessible. Well, to be honest, both of them are simple and accessible. But first of them is macro photography, that involves photographing the picture or whatever you need to study, at maximum proximity. This allows you to get information about the state of preservation of the work, to identify the individual characteristic of the author, as well as general features, characteristic of artists of a certain time and school and whatever. Also, you can distinguish the techniques and sequences of building a painting layer, as well as to get some additional information about the materials and painting technique. Somewhat similar, as I said, and one might say related to this macrography, but more informative, is the microscopy method. Microscopic analysis makes it possible to detect the degree of restoration, like restoration interventions, as accurately as possible, in particular to recognize old toning and records that are not visible in ultraviolet, for example, due to a few layering of varnish or something like this. Well, sometimes it can happen. Only when examined under a microscope can one see restoration toning and writings that differ from the author's layer in the composition of pigments, the degree of transparency, and the topography also. Microscopy, yes, that's it, allows you to determine the method of applying the signature, since only with a significant increase can you see the subtle nuances of its location and establish whether it was written simultaneously with the painting, or it was applied later on top of craquelure, which is this cracks in the paintings from time, on dirt, also some mechanical damages such as scratches or restoration inserts. Now basically, to be honest, I will say that those are basically the similar methods, the same methods, because those microscopes now you can actually charge them to your computer via USB. They are not very they're not expensive, like not expensive at all, considering how much info you can get with using this machine, but you can take also photos of them. And I was actually doing this also, we were doing that when we were studying expertise and everything, and so our teacher, she was showing us how it can be done. And it's super informative, and you can literally see everything. You can literally see every single part of the painting, and if it's some damaged part of the painting, when you can see the basis of it, so you can literally see if it's built, like how it's built. If it's like a wooden stuff, for example, that I will be talking about this, and it is there's some layers going on there. You can see all of these layers, and you can study all of these layers, and you can take photos of all of these layers, without any camera. So it's super easy, and it's super informative, and it's just, to be honest, it's a very fun thing. Like we remember sitting just looking at all of that and it was super interesting. So another extremely useful method that is very commonly used now is the X-ray method. It works in an almost similar way as for medical stuff. It transmits the picture through, allowing us to see everything that is under the visible surfaces. Using an X-ray, an expert can determine the state of preservation of the work. So again, some losses, some restorations, some signs of transfer to a new base, for example. We can also see the image located below the visible painting layer. We can identify edits and compositional changes. We can identify some painting materials, like different substances that have like different ability to transmit and to reflect X-rays. We can also, using this method, we can reveal individual authors' methods of applying the primer, building a painting layer, and the character of the brush stroke when modeling forms. X-ray analysis plays an important role in solving the question of the attribution of the work. So it is very commonly used, I suppose, in the West especially, because they have more money there and more, possibility to do that. But overall, all of the work, like all of the methods that I mentioned, they do not involve direct intervention in the painting layer, primer or base, and do not require any degree of damage. Instead, for chemical analysis, for example, it is necessary to take samples, like small fragments from the paint layer and primer. Samples are usually taken from not visible areas such as the edges of the picture and areas covered by the frame. So, it will not obviously, and those, samples, that doesn't mean that we are like cutting half of the piece of these things. No, those can be like such a minuscule stuff. So, we are taking as little as we can, but knowing that this little will still show us some results, But yeah, but we are still trying to do, you know, it's like, again, as invisible as possible. But still, at the end of the day, this is considering that we are, you know, cutting something off, even if it's like piece like that you cannot really, you know, even take it with your own hands. It's still considered, you know, damage to the work. We still cut off a little piece of that. We still kind of ruin this piece. So that's why it's called. So that's why it's still considered a damage to an artwork. So this chemical analysis, it like, you know, makes it possible to identify the so-called dating materials, such as I already said, like name them. It's like varnishes, it's pigments, it's primers and stuff like that. So sometimes it is. There's actually this show, I forget to mention this, Fake and Fortune. Extreme, like, I will link down. I have like the playlist here on YouTube saved, so I will link it down below. That I really like. Sometimes I'm like, you know, I'm getting into that. I really like this show, and so they had one episode. Don't remember what work it was. What was that? To be honest, I don't remember anything. I just remember that when I was watching that, it was, you know, some guy, he was given those two specialists the painting that he believed that it was this and that artist. Like, I cannot remember which artist it was. I know this artist and I know his works, and I have, you know, like little visual library in my head myself, and he was showing that, and I was like, but you can clearly say that, like, you can clearly see that it is not him. Stylistically, already you can see that it's not this artist. And they had the doubts also. So you know, you can see that they looked at that and they were like, it doesn't look whatever. But they didn't say anything to this guy. And so they started to investigate whether this work can be something attributed to that artist or not. And so, long story short, they attributed that it's fake because they found a pigment there that was created in 1950s or something like that. Like 1950s, 1940s, I believe it was something in between these dates. And the work itself was dated 1920s. So, you know, it's fake. Again, they determined that because they took part of the they made a chemical analysis of this paint. There was this blue paint, and so this analysis showed that, well, this is a synthetic paint that was created in 1940s or 1950s, something there. So it cannot be 1920s. And there are other also, they established also that this work was not restored or anything. So this guy said that no, it's it's, you know, it's the thing that my like father or grandfather or something like that, I don't remember again correctly the story, he gave it to me, so this is something that we are given from, you know, in our family. And yeah, and so we think that this is this author, but so, and he was saying that no, we did not put this into restoration, we did not give it to restoration, anything. So they knew, those two experts, that okay, there were no like any restoration done on that. So it's impossible for this painting to have this blue and to be dated to 1920s. And this is how they said that, well, it's forgery, even though they saw already stylistically that it's someone else. It's probably someone who tried to imitate. So it's not like really a forgery, as we can say. So it's an imitation. And there's also these differences between, you know, forgery, copy, author copy, and fake and forgery. So imitation, it's not a crime. It's not something that, you know, as long as you're not trying to sell it and say that this is the original, actually, it's an imitation. It's just stylization or something. It's, you know, if it's for your own good, it's all right. It's fine. But yeah, so this is like one of the main differences between forgery and like imitation, stylization. It's just, you know, in short, for you to understand that it is kind of like, this is one of the pieces how we can say that this is not forgery. With fake and fortune, I will link it down below. I don't know how I forget about this, how I forget to mention that. It's extremely interesting, and it's exactly, you can see how art expertise work and what they're doing from A to Z. So we will end this video with some was briefly talking about the basis of works of art, because paintings are done, they can be done on different bases, such as wood, paper, canvas, cardboard, like etc., metal, something like that. Therefore, every study of painting begins precisely with its base. I don't know if I'm calling it correctly, whether it's the correct term in English, but I hope you understand what I mean. And so let's start with the wood, because the study of the wooden base aims to find out what kind of wood it is, to analyze its state of preservation, also to identify structural features, and there is also the possibility of determining an even more accurate age of the work using such method as dendrochronology, or also radiocarbon method as well. It also can show good results. It is desirable to examine the picture from all sides, if of course there is such a possibility and such an opportunity. This will give, and it's just not, it's not just about the wood bases, but everything. This will give you more accurate information. Sometimes it is necessary to cut a very thin section of the top layer from the very small area in order to better examine the wood, and the cut part is viewed under the microscope most of the times. It is also can provide additional information. If it is necessary to take a section of a larger size, such a section is usually taken from the back side, again if we have access there. In the case when the wood is very rotten and may fall apart from further research, like literally in our hands, we're cutting this piece, we're putting it in resin, and then further manipulations can be done to that. A qualified specialist can determine the type of tree from such sections. However, it is not always possible to say exactly which tree is which tree it is within the family. That is what I mean, that the expert can see that the picture is drawn, for example, on an oak board. However, it is impossible to say exactly, what kind of oak this is, in the vast majority of cases. Sometimes it is possible, sometimes, but it is very rare. Tree identification is also affected by the condition of the wood, because wood eaten by beetles, some infected with some fungus or treated with some solutions, is almost impossible, unfortunately, to identify. The degree of preservation of the wood can also tell us about the history of the painting. Often such paintings reach our time quite thin. As a rule, these are some old sections to protect the painting from wood beetles that eat it. So, for example, many paintings by Italian masters of the 18th and 19th century, they came down to us, very thin. Again, as a rule, such procedures were carried out on pictures painted on some soft trees. Paintings made on oak boards or some conifers do not suffer so much from this beetles and stuff like that, basically everything that eats this wood. This is due to the presence of some certain chemical elements and resin in these trees. Therefore, it is necessary to carefully study the picture before making any assumptions about the origin of this picture. It should also be remembered that such boards affected by wood beetles are often used to forge works of art. Often damaged old boards were used for forgery, while the backside was not touched, on which we can actually see, those natural holes from beetles, some old seals, some inventory numbers of galleries or museums, and just overall some other attributes that were preserved, which could, as it were, confirm the antiquity of some of this falsified work. Such a board was processed from the front side, so it was covered with some primer, and the picture was already painted on top. Such falsification can actually easily be seen with the help of X-ray examination. If it is a fake, then this primer will, flow into these holes. The soil in such places becomes thicker, and therefore the larvae's movements are clearly visible on the X-ray. X-rays are also generally helpful in determining the degree of insects, like this insect infestation of wood, and you can also see whether the process of destruction is still goes on or it has ended at this point. That is, whether the larvae are still alive inside the board or not. Because if larvae are visible on the X-ray during the examination, such work is postponed for another months or two, let's say, and then a repeated examination is carried out. In this case, it will be seen that, on this X-ray, that the larvae have changed their places. So then we can say that they are alive and they are continuing to destroy the tree and this wooden board. So therefore it is necessary to take measures to save wood as soon as possible. So now the most popular base, it's fabric base, that is canvas, obviously. And for a very long period of time, canvas played actually more of an auxiliary role for artists, since the main material on which they painted was wood. The fabric was fixed, for example, on a board. It was primed, and then the work began. We have evidence of such technology since actually Egyptian times. It is also known from old ancient some manuscripts and resources that animal skin actually could have been used instead of fabric, and this could be horses, like horse skin, donkey skin, some bull skin or cow, etc. This technique is especially characteristic of Byzantine art, which later influenced Italian old art, and they covered this wood base with a thin layer of canvas for quite a long time. And various also data indicate that at first only linen clothes were used for such manipulations. A little later they started to use some hemp fabric. In Italy, the fabric was glued on the front side only. However, there is some of the examples where you can see this fabric be on, what is this? On the front side and on the back side also, but mostly just on the front side. Front and back, it was more popular in Spain, like in Spanish art, and canvases, they started to use canvas not earlier than 15th century, even though there are some examples earlier, but commonly used they started to use it in 15th century. German masters used the canvas only on the back side. This fabric in our country also, this like in Kiev and Rus, we also have this thing, it's called pavoloka, and it is super characteristic of icon painting. First they applied it on the whole area of the wood, but over time they began to be glued only to the joints of the wood. Canvas in its modern form has been widely used in Europe since the 15th century, but as I said, this does not mean that there are no examples of paintings painted on canvas before that. The older paintings painted on canvas are the works of Venetian masters. They gave this preference to canvas because it was much more convenient to work with the wood, and it was lighter, so it was easier and cheaper to sand it and to sell it. It was also more convenient for tourists who, just like now, they were bringing some souvenirs from their trip with them, and a small landscape on canvas was much more convenient to take with you than the same picture, even on a small, piece of wood on a small board like that or something. In addition, also Venetian masters preferred the canvas because of we can say Venice itself. Everyone understands that water does not go very well with wood, and that masters back then especially, they wanted to create works that will exist for a very long time. And due to the high humidity, the works on the boards were not stored well, and they were losing their qualities way faster. After all, the board often swells from moisture, the wooden base could simply split, and etc. and wooden bases were not suitable at all for decorating facades. Therefore, the canvas in the works of the Venetian rises to the first place. Therefore, Venetian masters started to use canvas more often, plus they were doing extremely big, sized paintings of, like, on a whole wall, from the floor to ceiling. And can you imagine how heavy this thing could have been if it was done on wooden planks like that, or even like that? The walls they would just collapse if you would put such things on the walls. So they were using canvases, they were joining those fabric and just creating one enormously big canvas. So it was more convenient again to use and to transport, to do like whatever. So in the in the North European countries, this canvases gained popularity as early as the 17th century, even though obviously we have some of the examples, like individual examples of paintings done on canvases. However, they're pretty rare. The only things though, very large scale paintings, they were done. It's not something uncommon for them to be done on canvases. But everything else, it still was, on wooden planks and stuff like that. So if we're talking also about wooden frame, so these, things that are, the canvas are stretched on. I'm sorry, I have no idea how it is correctly in English, and I cannot find this word in English, how it will be. This wooden frame also has its own, development. So, and we can say from which period of time this wooden frame is, which is also very useful for the dating of the painting. But those, this wooden frames, like under frames, I will call it like that, they started to be done as almost as they are done now, as modern one, starting from 18th century. So what also this, studying of, I'll now tell you, of the fabric of this canvas can give us. So first and foremost, we are looking into we're doing this botanical analysis, basically, as we can say. So we are looking from which plant it was done, and we can also say by that to which period it belongs or something like that, because we have this, at this point now we gathered all of this information technically. For this determination, you need to take a thread of samples, like 2 samples. It is taken from the very, outermost part of the canvases, which has not been treated with any glues, wax, fats, like any stuff of that. And these threads, they need to be quite long. And further, certain manipulations are carried out that will give us more information. Like, I will not get into that because, it's something that you need to do yourself. I was reading that and I was just like, okay, I will not be able to explain it to you because you literally need to be, you need to do that to understand what is this. But basically, it gives us some information. More experienced experts, they can identify the canvas with the help of a simple magnifying glass, actually, if the back part of the canvas is well preserved, because the specificity of the fabric is determined by 3 elements: by the type of interlacing of threads, their thickness, and destiny of weaving. No, what I said, density, my god, not destiny, density of weaving. The study of the canvas can also show whether the picture was transferred to another base, whether the picture was once fixed, and etc. Another aspect that can be shown by studying the canvas is the initial size of the picture. That is, the picture could either be cropped over time, or on the contrary, we can see how the artist's idea, changed over time and the picture was, increased. Cropping of paintings was especially popular in the 18th century, when the fashion for such, we can say, decorativism began. During this period, wealthy people liked to decorate their homes in this, their walls in this form of carpet, as we can say, that is covered, the whole wall needed to be covered in paintings. And of course, the pictures did not always fit in size. And therefore, the owner could express a wish that some picture can be, cut down, or again, on the contrary, enlarged. And pretty often actually those streamed parts, they were they were then redone as some independent works and also hang on the walls. Another thing that was used and is used sometimes, it's metal foundations. These are though the least popular ones. And although this material is stronger than all other types of bases, it is very heavy and thus pretty expensive. And thus it is not profitable for artists to use. The main threat of destruction here is metal corrosion, and in the Middle Ages the most popular metal was iron, but in the future copper became the most popular metal. The study of metal is first of all important for restorers so that they know how to work, well, later how to restore these pieces. In addition, knowing the exact composition of the metal can help in attribution and dating. Because, for example, if the metal base is made of chemically, well, pure copper, I'm sorry, I'm not really into all of that, but it is just, I'm like retelling you one of the tips that if it's pure copper, then it is safe to say that the work was painted no earlier than 1896, so it has a specific date, when the so-called electrolytic copper became popular, something like that. Also, during the study of metal sheets, you can see traces of plate forging. Earlier plates will show forging marks on examination, while later examples will have rolling marks. So this is also another of the features by which you can determine falsification, for example. And we will end our video with parchment and paper, well, paper specifically. So for a very long time, parchment was one of the main materials in Europe. There is such a manuscript that is called the Bernese manuscript, dated to 9th century. And so in this manuscript it is written like some interesting information about parchment, which is, for example, they're writing that if it is some, white, some smooth, beautiful parchment, that is a parchment definitely from Flanders or Normandy, somewhere from there. If the parchment is kind of, colored, that means not like blue or pink or something, that's just, the different kind of like color of skin. This is Burgundy parchment, and those parchments were occasionally used for paintings. Parchment where one side was white and the other like this yellowish, more even reddish, this is Italian parchment, and etc, etc. So it's very interesting. So we have info like that. Occasionally the parchment was dyed purple, sometimes even black also, and etc. There is some examples of manuscripts with parchment like that. And parchment was primarily used as a basis for illuminations, obviously, and occasionally as a basis for painting in, like, in its common sense that we're imagining. Paper got to Europe thanks to the Arab conquerors through Spain, actually. And there is evidence that paper was first produced in Europe, in France, in 1189. Then in Italy, paper began to be made in the 13th century. In Germany, paper was imported for a very long time, although it also started to be produced somewhere around 13th century, but only in 14th century this paper began to be more popular, and they were able to create paper that could compete with French and Italian one. In the Netherlands, the first paper mills appeared in the 16th century, and just in general, the vast majority of Western and Central European countries established their own paper productions in the 16th century. Manufacturers marked their products with a filigree. Well, I suppose it's called like this also in English, because it's obviously not a Ukrainian word. But filigree, basically it's a watermark, as we can say. And so forging this watermark was obviously illegal. And therefore, when experts examine works on paper, one of the things they look at for better identification and attribution is this particular watermark. And it is kind of easy to see on clean paper, and it is way more difficult, obviously, to see on used paper. But on clean paper, it is super visible. Like, you can put it on also on like daylight, and you can see it on the paper. Yeah, and you can then with this watermarks and everything, you can say also which to which even mastered this painting, this sketch or whatever belonged, what period of time this sketch was made, studying this company and stuff like this. I don't know. It was every year now, this field of expertise, field of art, field of architecture, architecture also, archaeology mostly. It's, we're starting to work more and more and more with people from different fields at this point already, and finally the researchers biggest part of researchers are starting to see that it is way more convenient to work with people from different fields, and it will bring you way more information, whether if you will just sit on this info and just guard it like a dragon or something like that. So so more and more people are starting to work on different stuff, and on archaeological diggings also there's groups, there's more and more groups that have not just archaeologists in their in the group. There again art historians, some people who are learning pigments, people who are studying architecture, some botanists, some geologists, I don't know, you name it, basically everyone. There is certain excavations, very big one, like Çatalhöyük, for example, in Turkey. They have even psychologists there. So it is such an interesting, interdisciplinary stuff now, and it's good. It's extremely good, and it brings a lot more to the table than whether it's just someone from one field who works on stuff. Yeah, but I will stop myself here. So I just tell you also to not really summarize, but just for you to understand that this is everything that I told you. It's basically a tip of the iceberg. It's just just some overall understanding for you what is art expertise and what is done and what methods are there and what they're looking into. But this is not everything. There's much more depth into that. I decided to not talk about pigments, also because that is such a vast topic, and this is one of my favorite topics, to be honest. I really would like to study this, and I really would like this topic to be something that I would do for life, but unfortunately in Ukraine, so there's no specialist with that, and thus while I'm studying now, I cannot, when I'm I cannot really write a paper or something, because I need somewhere to guide me. I need a teacher that will help me to write my paper, just like that. But but unfortunately there's no one with pigments, and so it kind of pisses me off. And there's a lot of people and teachers who are being like, why the hell do you need to study pigments and stuff like that? And I'm just like, what? We need it, we really need it. But okay. So so I left out pigments on purpose. I think that I will make sometime in the future, or I don't know when, because it's again such a vast topic. But I will make a video about pigments, about history of certain pigments, maybe, or maybe we will go like that by color or something like this. And it will be extremely interesting, because again there's not a lot, but there's a little bit of people who are studying that and who are publishing very great books about that, and so I will retell you some of these stories in the next videos sometime in the next videos. Maybe this video will land to someone who is an art expert and you are doing something like this for life, because also this is the topic that I would like to be an art expert, I would like to do also for life, but I have no idea how to get into this field, literally, in Ukraine here especially. And and just overall we have in Ukraine very big problems with that, but but just again, I have no idea how to get into the field. What type of skills do you need to have, to get into this field? I don't know. A part of being very good in art history, in terms of knowing styles and stuff like that, but everything else I don't know. But maybe we'll land to some of art experts, and they will also write something very interesting for all of us to read. I hope it was interesting for you. I hope you now have at least kind of overall picture of how it's done. So hope to see you in the next videos, and will stay safe wherever you are, and stay healthy also, because it's the season of cold, of COVID, and all of these monstrosities. So yeah, so stay healthy also, and we'll hope to see you in the next videos. Bye bye.